anytime you get investors where they own too much, they're not in it for the vision, it's gonna crash because they're gonna
Yeah,
dip.
this is a very challenging realization that I've struggled with for a long time, because for so long I've always had this sort of inferiority complex.
So there was a lot of legitimacy behind the token. Talk
Yeah.
about what happened when that legitimacy, for whatever reason, went away, and then it led to like the burning or the crash of the coin, right?
I mean, I for one, I was just a community guy. I
Yeah.
was like, I was so big on it, and at one point the dev, he's like, dude, I had $500 at the start of this. My tokens, he's like, my tokens are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. He's like, but what was really cool about it was, he's like, it's unethical for me because I didn't put money in, but he's like, because I'm telling people to buy into this, he's like, I will not sell.
Sell it, yeah.
And when he said that to me, and because I had talked so many
You
people
were
into
so
buying
deep
in,
in
I
it.
was like, in my head, I'm like, it's unethical for me to sell. Like
Right.
because I started understanding how people were pumping it, and then because I was really just beginning to grasp the concept of like how the economics of like people putting a bunch of money, rallying all these people to get in, and then pulling out the money, and then all these people. Because I'd never seen someone who'd been burned
Right.
by it. I mean, I'd been
Right.
burned, but I was like, ah. But then once I was like, I realized I'm like, without really intending to, I was now a leader. I was leadership. I was like, a significant part in running the project, and an influence. And I was like, I just can't. So I was like, here's my wallet, everybody. You can see how much I'm holding in here.
Yeah.
I will not sell $1. And
Right.
I like, until it went down to like my initial principal, I didn't take any money out of
Yeah.
it. And so it was, but yeah, I mean, it like,
See, so many
there
great
was an
projects like
intrinsic
that.
value
If
to
you,
it.
yeah,
With
so many
these
great
things, it's
projects like that.
community.
You know what happened is like, because I look at that and there's so many learning lessons from that. Just
Yeah.
not even the launch of the coin, but the success of it over time. I think anytime you get investors where they own too much, they're not in it for the vision, it's gonna crash because they're gonna
Yeah.
dip. They're gonna dip at some point. At some point, everyone's got $1, and it's usually pretty small,
Yeah.
and so it's hard to sustain. So unless it's run like where the mass majority of the owners, like a big portion of it, is owned by someone internal, and then you give a few percentages out, whatever, because then that can create the volatility. But most of it needs to be stable, right?
Yeah.
But I think overall,
Yeah.
it's such a great experience. And then you pivoted from shit coins to then
Yeah.
NFTs and
I went
Web3.
on.
Talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so like I built such a great network from that. Met so many people, and so many people spoke life into me, because up to that point I was just like really sales, and then
Yeah.
that happened, and then I was like, oh man, like I want to, people were just like, man, you're really like you're doing a great job leading this and taking initiative. Like you should be a CEO. You are a CEO personality, and I've just never. I had people who I never really qualified to tell me that advice, like where I was like, okay, well, you're maybe a family friend, or you're like a friend, and you're gonna make me feel good. But these people who, they had no incentive to like really
To
pump my
tell you
ego,
that,
like
yeah.
I was genuinely doing something for the first time, and they were giving me that direct feedback, and it just sort of, it was just that programming in my mind that I was like, I think I can lead. And so ultimately, I mean, there was progressions, and when the market cap went down, I fought tooth and nail. I dedicated like all my time to try to figure out how to revamp it back up. But the difference was too, is that once I wrapped my head around it too, I was like, man, once it started going down and people were getting hurt, I then recognized for the first time, I'm like, man, getting something excited without having this intrinsic value of a product or a service or where it's really going, like I kind of caught on to like how these things really worked. And it was just funny because I felt like, I was just excited.
Yeah.
And anyway, it
It's like a real business lesson just in like the crypto space that you
yeah,
got, right? I think just that like few months, you were
yeah,
so like all in and it was working and it was cool. But I think you just learned, even if the project didn't last, you just learned so much in that time
yeah.
about what it takes to take some idea to reality and then try to get people to buy into the idea, the vision, all that. So that was
I
cool.
pumped the brakes after that, when everything kind of slowed down to kind of like a stop. And I really kind of took a lot of time. So I wanted to come up with an idea, and I wanted to build something that, that I knew I could. What I realized is that I would. this was a very challenging realization that I've struggled with for a long time, because for so long I've always had this sort of inferiority complex. Is that the
I
right,
think
like
it's the right
it's like
word.
a
Yeah,
like, and
like
it's
you're not
also
good enough.
imposter syndrome too.
Yeah.
Like I've always felt like I might be good at something, but if someone has conviction, the difference between like knowing and having conviction, to me, I felt like I'm not gonna lie about what I know and I don't know. So if somebody comes around and they say, "Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing," at that point I was like, "Oh, well, if you're saying so, then you obviously do, because you'll take accountability and all that for what you say." And that got me burned so many times in launching things too early, in doing things in the wrong cadences, just because you're trying to please someone or you're scared and you're just trying to make a quick decision. And so I realized, I'm like, okay, well, if I'm gonna do something again, I'm gonna have absolute control over it, and I'm just, because I have faith in myself that I ultimately have the big vision and that I can carry, and I kind of learned that, and so I'm like, I want to continue growing until I can find more people that align with these, like, with the values and vision I have, and really trust myself. And that's extremely painful. It's extremely difficult, because being a little bit naive, being very optimistic, put a lot of trust into people, really trust them at their word, and then you just kind of learn, okay, you got to learn how to hold people accountable. You got to learn how to, like, write contracts. You got to learn how
Right.
to do all
And
these
just
different
to even
things.
just deal with disappointment, because so many people I know were like, yeah, I'm the guy, this, I'll do this for you. They get the money and then you don't hear from them. It's like,
Yeah,
what? You just said you were going to do my marketing for me, right?
yeah. So
You
I
learned that
dropped.
too. I know what
Yeah,
that's like. Yeah.
yeah. Sorry.
No, good.
I dropped everything, quit Vivint at
Yeah.
the time, and I was like, what I recognized was, I recognized that the blockchain was this new technology, and that everything on the internet surface was going to have some type of tie into the blockchain at some point in time. And so I saw this unique opportunity where every single executive, CEO, every single entrepreneur, investor, that they were being humbled by this new technology. And having the experience of Vivint, where we were communicating new technology to people who had no concept of our tech for so long, I was like, man, I have this unique ability to do this that I had learned from working with community members. So I so I realized, if I absolutely commit into this thing, I can get into the room with all the people who, in all the different industries, from film, entertainment, finance, business, entrepreneurs, like whatever it would be, marketing. And if I can be a figure of authority, I can start meeting the right people, and I can hold my own in that. And so I just saw that, quit the job, went all in, basically went back to Dallas, built a game plan, went to LA, and then I didn't know a single person in LA. We met with just somehow was able to just plug in with, like, phenomenal people through going to events, and one person to another, and just focusing on building those relationships. And it was the hardest thing by tenfold, hardest thing I've ever done. I literally thought I was going to go crazy, but because I was just, like, wearing myself out, I was
Right.
like,
You're just working all the time.
yeah. And I mean, it was very fortunate that that our launch went extremely well, and we've just had some awesome partnerships, and I'm still today just as excited as I was then
Then,
to
yeah.
continue working and growing, and just being with the right people, and just
Do you,
focusing on
so like,
value
I
creation.
want to dig into that a little bit. Do you think you could have done it all if you had a chance, you were able to do it again now and re-experience similar things? Do you think you could have done it all without feeling like you're burning yourself out?
Um, Alex Hormozy talks about this. I loved every moment of it as much as
Yeah.
I hated it.
Yeah, yeah. No, no.
I think,
I think it's like an addiction to, like, not addiction, but
yeah.
like some sort of weird like attraction to the grind. Like you kind of you love it, but then there's like a you hate it, but you love it. Like it's like this weird
I'm curious if you
in the
relate to
gutter.
this, because, like, so, like, for me, I've always said to myself in the back of my head, if like it really came down to it, because Vivint was safe, like the job before it was safe, and I was like, if it really came down to it, and I had to ultimately put everything on the line, I always believed that I would show up to it, but I never had the conviction, because I never actually took that step. I never actually went 100% into
So many
anything.
people, right? Yeah.
So there was, like, this sort of, like, pleasure I got out of it, but
Yeah.
in a way, and also I was like, I'm as difficult as it is, I'm proving the most important person that I prove myself to is myself.
Yourself, yeah.